Hello, this is Angie Yingst, and you're listening to Centered, grounded conversations about the metaphysical. Blessed October Witches, it's Angelica with your Earth Medicine and Sky Medicine reading for October. I know it's the 9th of October, and I usually do this before the 1st, put it out on the 1st. I got caught up with the beautiful gathering of humans at Spirit of Oneness and getting my stuff together and ready, and then it's suddenly the full moon and life just got away from me a little bit. So I'm gonna share kind of the medicine of the month, and then the stuff that's already passed, which I had written before, just kind of, maybe compare to how you're going through and just know that this continues through. So in October, here in the Northern Hemisphere, we start to really feel the chill in the air. I know today I woke up and it was actually chilly outside, which is exciting. So October is kind of that time of changing leaves, pumpkins, the thinning of the veil, and it's all kind of a little cliche now, and we all know it, but we really do have that sense in the air of the spirits of nature and of the ancestors and the land and the elementals. And maybe I can say this succinctly. There is a feeling more meets the eye, that kind of idea. I'm always surprised that on October mornings, like there really is a fog, kind of settling on the ground, and the sun rises through it, and it's a little creepy, and there's silhouettes of trees and birds, and there feels like omens and signs and medicines, and I think, like, October, you're a mood girl, So I love October. I watch Practical Magic and all my little Halloween movies that don't involve too much gore because I'm very sensitive to gore. But either way, we start pulling the metaphorical and literal skeletons out of the closet. And this October, we have a nice, snuggly, cozy feeling, at least in the astrology. It's not so intense as September. And we deserve it. I mean, September had maybe more spookier things than Witches and Spirits of the Night. It had eclipses, and eclipses are often those moments that bring winds of change with them. They catalyze, is that the right word? And exaggerate issues already present. So they make us feel really intensely noticing shadow and patterns. And eclipses are kind of like slap you up against, the side of the head, like, I don't think you're listening to me, so I'm going to shake everything up and hope you pay attention to what we've been trying to tell you. So, as we're kind of burying September, we are remembering in October. And we can think of October as this time of almost like a cosmic reset, at least this year in 2025. It's a time for unplugging, rest, resetting, and just being present, one day at a time, as we say in recovery. We are really in this post-eclipse season, and that involves a lot of processing what happened. I mean, I like to call them integration moments. And the integration times are so much more intense than a lot of people give them credit for. They're like, oh, you're not doing anything right now. It's like, no, I'm integrating everything that was happening to me. So that's important. And I think that we have to think of these integration times as almost as valuable as having all these epiphanies, right? Because we're really, we've gone through shit. We saw some stuff. Now we have to process, meditate, talk to others, and heal. And healing involves rest, sacred rest. That doesn't mean we don't do anything. It just means we do things a little slower. Maybe we go for walks rather than runs, right? We get to, and that's both metaphorical and physical, we get to figure stuff out, and we get to figure out what we're releasing, what we're allowing in. We get to figure out who we are. We get to figure out what we need to move forward in the next phase. In November, we're looking at Mercury shift into its beloved retrograde, and so that's something we all understand and can look forward to in our own masochistic ways. But honestly, like, as we're moving into next month, which has that retrograde, we can kind of come in and really think about, what it is that we learned through the eclipses and how to kind of put them into practice in our lives. So let's talk about October. So we did have a full moon in Aries on Monday, October 6th. And it wasn't just any moon, it was the first of 3 super moons this year. And this was, a massive one, certainly the biggest and the brightest of the full moons in 2025. And it was rising low on the horizon, so it looked really golden and almost unreal. Bella Luna, as they say in my favorite movie of all time, Moonstruck. But it's the kind of moon that makes you want to run barefoot out in the field and howl a little. So, I don't know if you got to do that, but we also think of this as the harvest moon, the one closest to autumn equinox. And usually that's in September. But, this was one that happened in October. So, that's cool. So September's was the corn moon, and this is the harvest moon. And I think that's pretty apt, right? We were learning stuff. We were gathering fruit. Now we're harvesting it, right? We could see all the stuff coming up, and now we're taking it in. So the Aries moon is really wild-hearted and unfiltered, and it moves us to initiate action in our lives. And so we often have to ask ourselves during these full moon periods, what lights you up? What is your authentic self? What is worth fighting for, right? And when are you going to get ready to stop asking for permission to do the thing that you want to do? So Aries is a fire sign. This is a supermoon. Everything's probably going to feel louder. Maybe you noticed that. Maybe you had a little fight on Monday. I did. And have anger, passion, honesty, desire. Those things all they burn hot and fast in Aries. But usually they don't stick around too long, right? They come out that way. And if you're with somebody who understands that, or you can kind of explain, this isn't forever, this is just a thing that happened, you can move into courage and really creatively figuring out how to move forward, So kind of know that might have burned bright on the full moon, but it'll sort of slow down and you can really integrate. There's a great meteor shower on the 7th, and it probably is still happening. So that's the Draconids meteor shower, which peaked on the 7th. So yeah, look up. It's, it's a dragon meteor shower. So, let's move into the future, right? So finally we're at that part. So on October 13th, Venus glides into her home sign of Libra. And oh my goodness, it's like silk sheets after months of burlap, maybe. So Venus loves it here. It's all about connection and balance and aesthetics. This is the prime, write the love letter, light some candles, redecorate the altar energy. And that's going to happen on Monday, which isn't always the sexiest day. But you might be feeling kind of out of sync or whatever. This is the time to kind of have a little harmony and maybe dance a little and have a little romance. Venus in Libra is about beauty as a devotion and as a practice. So, that means walking the beauty way, which is beautifying everything. So it's a good day to clean and decorate and do all the fun stuff. Okay. So also on October 13th, Pluto stations direct. That is a nice exhale after months of slow subterranean pressure. So we know transformation has kind of been brewing under the surface. Now it's time for things to start moving again. So we can see some shifts in technology, activism, power structures, and that might be something global. You might see it in your own story, but this is a chance to kind of re-engage with our own story of rebirth after, a time inward. So what have we learned about our relationship to power or structure or surrender or control? Now it's the time to start living that out loud. There is a new moon in Libra on October 21st, and that is a reset for love, artistry, balance, because it is a Libra new moon. Yay! And those are fun because they're gentle. And again, beauty is in the conversation, harmony in our relationships, aesthetics in our spaces, grace in our choices. If someone new is kind of entering into your life right now, pay attention because they may end up playing a very meaningful role. This lunation is ideal for signing contracts, especially because we're looking at a Mercury retrograde in November. So this would be a good time to finish things off. So we're starting creative ventures, beautifying our environment, thinking of new art projects, new, even haircuts. How do we feel pretty inside and out? That's kind of what new moons and Libras do. They help us connect with that. On October 22nd, Neptune retrogrades back into Pisces. So it's its home sign. One final review tour before re-entering Aries in January. And this is a nice encore from the last decade of what you've been going through. Spiritual awakening, imagination, sometimes confusion, dreaminess. You may notice some old dreams resurfacing or invitations to revisit your spiritual boundaries. This is a reminder that compassion without limits is not always love. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no. A complete sentence, no defending yourself. We also have Scorpio season beginning on October 22nd, and that's like transformation season. Scorpio is our real, it's ruled by Pluto and Mars. So I think it's traditionally ruled by Mars and then later ruled by Pluto. So we have this idea of like transformation and warriorness. So, we always talk about Scorpio as being a water sign, of course, but it is the most fiery of the water signs. And it is a fixed water sign, right? Scorpio season invites us to shed skins, to face truths, to remember our own resilience. Scorpio wants intimacy, not just in love, but in life. It wants to go deeper. And you may find Scorpios are like, they don't talk about themselves. Right. They're secret keepers. And not because they feel like not just open books, but they feel like, oh, I'm the one that wants to go deep and nobody wants to go deep with me. Right? So this is the fearless honesty healing journey that we enjoy through the year, is that Scorpio season. The last kind of lunation or, thing in the sky that I want to talk about is Mercury enters Sagittarius on the 29th. And that's really a time where we turn our own thoughts and comments to truth telling and big picture visioning. So, we have a couple weeks of Scorpio's emotional excavation, and then we're ready for some candor and laughter. And that's just, a reminder. Your delivery doesn't have to sting. Like, honesty doesn't have to be brutal. This is a time for teaching, writing, sharing our message. And perhaps just sleep on that text before you hit it, So this is a nice time, October, between fire and water, passion and surrender, truth and mystery. And the skies really ask us to balance like our expression with the grace of connection. So Aries, courage; Libra's love; Scorpio's depth. This month has all the makings of like integration around transformation through beauty, truth, and desire. So, we have medicine that I kind of called in with my calendar this year. And so our medicine this month is really around remembering, as always, because the veil is thin, and remembering. So this month, when the light wanes and the veil thins, the air itself starts to whisper stories. And so the medicine of October lives in this liminal hum, that sacred act of like remembering what was, and the soulful work of remembering, stitching ourselves back together, maybe bone by bone, or, cell by cell, spirit by spirit, in the right relation with all that came before it, right? So as we turn our wheel towards the shadow and the sun lowers its golden crown and the world exhales and leaves loosen their grip, teaching us all about release, right? The trees are teaching us, it's beautiful to release. Then the leaves go back to the soil that held them. We remember, not nostalgia, but a deep recollection, a recollecting the pieces of self, lineage, and love that time has scattered, right? So to remember is to call the spirits home, and to remember is to place those spirits back in the body of your life. So when we remember the ancestors, blood, spirit, and story, not as distant ghosts, but as cells in our own being or becoming, we remember ourselves by welcoming the lost parts we exiled in order to survive. Maybe that's the bold child, or the tender heart, or the dreamer, or the witch, or the mystic. Whatever it is, this is the season when those forgotten parts of ourselves come knocking and asking to be let in. So October's medicine is really integration through reverence. And it invites us to sit at the table with what once was grief, joy, failure, lineage, loss, and make ourselves whole from it, meaning we heal from it. And we can do this in a lot of ways. Obviously, like you can light a candle for the dead. That's a version of you that never got closure, right? Or never gets another expression with them. So we can place those photos or symbols of our ancestors, mentors, our loves on an altar and leave room for your own name there because you're part of that continuum. So remembering, though, remembering is sacred body work. And I mean, you can think of it as soul retrieval, yes. And that also is the simple human act of grounding, can be remembering, feeling your feet, your heartbeat, your breath, moving into your body as you integrate everything you've learned from September. So when you breathe deeply in the October air, you're really breathing the exhale of your ancestors, the same molecules that once lived in their lungs. You're remembering what it means to belong to the lineage of the living, right? And this is why the medicine of October asks us to not just slow down, but listen and honor what dies. And we do compost as the holiness, the holy act, decay as transformation. Every leaf on the ground is a prayer to the language of release. And so we have a couple allies. I mean, there were more on my calendar, and you can kind of choose them, but I chose these as the ones we're going to work with. So Marigold, the golden lantern guiding souls home, remembering that joy and grief can coexist. And then Obsidian, which is a grounding protective stone. It's wonderful for deep ancestral work. Owl is the silent guide through the underworld, the teacher of seeing in the dark. And Butterfly, the guide for rebirth. So together they kind of help us remember that death is not the opposite of life. It's its deep inhale. So let's talk about Marigold. So Marigold is known as Calendula officinalis, pure solar medicine, carrying the energy of the sun. So you can work with calendula, you can work with the marigold outside. Just remember they're different plants. So you can use calendula as you can steep it in tea, for example. You couldn't do that with the marigold growing in your yard. So just be careful with that, okay? But we use a lot of marigold on Dia de los Muertos ofrendas, and we use it because it has the energy of the sun, which is radiant, steady, life-giving. So even when planted near death and decay, it blossoms in the soil. It brightens the soil, calls forth renewal. And spiritually, she's the flower that reminds us to keep showing up for life. Even when it hurts, even when it's messy, right? In many traditions, Marigold is said to guard the threshold between life and death. In Mexico, she is called the flower of the dead. Sempenchacul. I hope I pronounced that correctly. With her bright petals scattered on altars and paths during Dia de los Muertos, she guides the souls home with her fragrance and color, and she illuminates the way for spirits. And also for the living, helping us to remember that joy and grief are siblings. If you've ever had deep grief in a family, in your family, when you gather, it usually isn't sad stories. It usually start telling things that make you laugh, that you remember about that person, that are joyous, And that's kind of the idea that her spiritual medicine brings forth. It's like the clarity, the protection, the remembrance, and the joy of it all, right? It doesn't deny pain, it just includes it, right, as part of it all. We know Calendula has tons of healing gifts in herbalism. She's anti-inflammatory, antifungal, antibacterial. She's a balm for wounds, burns, rashes, sore hearts. Herbalists love her for internal cleansing and lymphatic movement and helping the body process stagnation, grief, and toxicity. In other ways, we think of Marigold as being this cheerful resilience medicine. She meets sorrow with compassion, not denial. She reminds us to let joy back in without guilt. She teaches us that healing isn't about erasing pain, but transmuting it into wisdom. So if you feel spiritually burnt out, she might be the right medicine for you. Just kind of saying, I am solar alchemy. I'm the power to transform sorrow into strength. The sun still rises within you. She kind of teaches warmth and protection can coexist. And love doesn't vanish even if a body does vanish. So we kind of work with her as the healers bloom and the golden lantern in the underworld. Now, the next ally is Obsidian, and Obsidian is a really powerful and multi-layered ally. It is volcanic fire frozen into glass, basically. Protective and deeply shadowy, and also profoundly cleansing and revealing. Obsidian is not a crystal in the strictest sense. It's a volcanic glass born of molten lava that cooled so quickly it could not create that perfect crystalline structure that most minerals take on. But the fiery birth gives obsidian its intensity, and that's why we work with it as a healer. The chemical composition is primarily silica, which is what quartz crystal is, but it's also more like a glass, right? So it has trace elements of iron, magnesium, and other minerals that will influence the color. It has a 5 to 5.5 on the Mohs scale, so it's softer than quartz but sharper edge. So when it breaks, be careful. It does act like glass. And this is kind of an apt metaphor for working with obsidian. It's a stone of raw truth, of protection, of shadow work. It does not coddle, it reveals. And to work with obsidian is to kind of gaze into the mirror that reflects not only what we want to see, but what we've buried, avoided, and denied. So, beneath its reputation for heaviness, obsidian also offers profound clarity and release. It's a stone that can cut through illusions and shatter what is false. It's a blade that kind of clears a path and a shield that keeps us safe when we travel it. It is considered the strongest protective stone in the metaphysical sense. It acts like a psychic shield, absorbing and deflecting negative energies, attachments, and psychic attacks. Because it's a volcanic glass, the energy is direct, sharp, and uncompromising. And so many practitioners carry obsidian as a talisman against harmful intentions or to maintain clarity in chaotic environments. It's also deeply grounding, and it ties us to the root chakra and to the energy of the earth. In turbulent times, obsidian anchors us so we don't lose ourselves in fear or uncertainty. And we call obsidian the stone of truth because it has a way of stripping away illusions. And it also is part of the reason that some people don't like obsidian, because it brings to the surface the parts of ourselves that we might want to ignore, our shadow selves, right? So it's an invaluable ally for shadow work, if you're doing therapy, for deep healing, for shamanic healing, but it also is super intense. Obsidian doesn't sugarcoat. It says, what are you avoiding? Let me help you feel that, so you know. So it does require courage, and the reward is self-awareness and liberation from patterns that really hold us back from our true self. Because it surfaces old traumas and suppressed emotions, obsidian can be a catalyst for emotional release. And emotional release can look like a lot of things. It can help us cry, it can help us release physically. It can help us cut ties with toxic relationships, or let go of habits, or undo energetic cords that bind us. We use the knives to cut the cords out. For empaths, it can be a powerful ally in discerning what energy belongs to us and what belongs to others. It also opens portals, and so we can use the obsidian mirrors, those polished black discs, for scrying, divination, and communicating with spirits. And that's, they were found in the, Aztecs, toolkit for doing just that. It was a seeing ally. So, obsidian isn't always the easiest medicine. It does challenge us and confront us and strip away our illusions, and its intensity is matched by its power. It is protective, clarifying, and it gives us the ability to face what's hidden. So working with obsidian is a commitment to honesty with yourself and with spirit. Now, the animal medicine that we work with, we have two that came through for me, which is owl, and then butterfly. So I'm going to talk about butterfly first, because butterfly is an interesting ally. Butterfly's been around for 130 million years and exists in warm climates or in the warmer months all over the world. And there are more than 100,000 species of butterfly, including moths. And there's 4 distinct stages. The butterfly lays the eggs on the plant. The larva or caterpillar will feed. Then the caterpillar prepares itself to become pupa, lying in chrysalis, and then emerges as a butterfly. So this process, sorry, I stumbled a bit. This process is honored and observed by cultures for millennia, leading to it becoming kind of a universal symbol for transformation, rebirth, and change. So nearly every culture honors the beautiful butterfly's experience of change, often symbolizing the soul. And the idea that butterflies can be the spirit of the deceased communing again with the earth. So we see that like in Asia, Mexico, New Zealand, Zaire, butterfly is seen as the soul. In southwestern tribes, butterfly is a symbol of change and joy. Butterfly Maiden, a guide that recently, or I shouldn't say recently, a few years ago came in for my own personal work from the Hopi tradition, is a Kachina spirit that rules the springtime and Earth's fertility. In Central America, the Maya saw butterfly as the souls of the lost warriors. In China, butterfly says to bring love and fertility, and it's often just cited as a loved one who passed over. I know a lot of people you say that, my dad comes as a white butterfly, or my mom comes as the monarch, so we do see that. There's a proverb that we all heard: just when the caterpillar thought its life was over, it became a butterfly. And so butterfly often arrives when we desperately need to change our entire structure of thinking and doing. And other allies for transformation, like snake, can come in at different times, and when snake comes in, some people have like a natural fear of snakes. So butterfly is a wonderful way to bring lightness to the heavy medicine of rebirth and transformation. So when we crave greater freedom, butterfly kind of arrives to bring the courage to carry out the changes necessary in the process of growth. It's interesting, and if you listen to Radiolab, there's a wonderful, it's a podcast, and it's on PBS or NPR, sorry. But research shows that butterfly is the only living being capable of changing entirely its genetic structure during the process of transformation. So the caterpillar's DNA is totally different from the butterfly's. So the symbol of total transformation comes in through butterfly. But what's interesting is in this Radiolab episode where they talk about it, they have the caterpillar, and I guess they give it a little poison or something, not poison, something that it repels, like it doesn't like it. So it looks like a leaf, but it has something on there that they don't like, and so it will refuse to eat that leaf now, because it's going to be the poison, right? They have done that, and as the butterfly comes out, it also is repelled by that. So there is something it keeps. It doesn't just change into a new being altogether. It still has the memory of the caterpillar. And that's a really important part of the medicine. This self-transformation and reincarnation and magic, the shape-shifting, also can use the wisdom of the past, of who we were. So there's also this really well-known story about this man who found a cocoon of a swallowtail butterfly. He took it home to watch it emerge, and on the day this small opening appeared, and the man watched the butterfly struggle and struggle for several hours as the butterfly forced its body out of this little hole. And he decided to help, so he cut the cocoon with scissors, and the butterfly emerged easily, but the body was swollen, the wings were small and shriveled, and the man expected the wings to enlarge or the body to shrink on its own, and it never did. And so the little butterfly spent the rest of its life crawling around with a swollen body and shriveled wings, and it was never able to fly. So part of the medicine of butterflies is that we cannot ask other people to do our work for us. We must go through the process of breaking down what no longer serves. We need to struggle for rebirth. And the struggling through that tiny opening forces fluid from the body and into the wings so it can be ready to fly. Right? So the medicine of butterfly is that freedom and flight that comes after struggle. By depriving the butterfly of the struggle, he deprived the butterfly of health and integration. So butterfly medicine reminds us that sometimes the struggle is exactly what we need in our lives. So the other medicine is owl. An owl is just a long time favorite power animal of shamans, seers, and those who walk between worlds. And her medicine is mystery itself. It's ancient, moon-soaked, and alive with secrets. She's an apex predator that's nocturnal. Not every owl is nocturnal, just to know that, but let's just give it that's the keeper of the dark, right? So owl rules the night and belongs to the feminine, to the lunar realms, and all that's seen, unseen, deeply felt. She is both a goddess and a ghost. So both wisdom and warning. And she hunts in darkness, and that's come to represent prophecy, magic, hidden mysteries of the divine feminine. And across the world, owl has perched on the shoulder of goddesses and prophets. To the ancient Greeks, she was sacred to Athena, the guardian of the Acropolis and the embodiment of wisdom. To the early Christian Gnostics, she was linked to Lilith, Adam's first wife, who refused to submit and claimed her own wild power. The Cherokee used the same word, skili, for both witch and the great horned owl. So in Celtic myth, the goddess Arianhod, I don't know if I pronounced that right. I wish I looked these things up before I just start talking. She could shapeshift into owl, seeing the truth that hides behind human eyes. That was her thing. And she moved through the night with great purpose, her wide wings carrying comfort and healing and revelation. And in India, the goddess Lakshmi was said to ride upon the back of an owl. And she is the goddess of wealth and abundance. Obviously, like, owls weren't always met with, like, yay, owl, to the Ojibwa and the Pueblo people. The call of owl was an omen of death. So if they heard that, they felt someone would die. And many tribes believed that medicine men could shapeshift into owls. So owls were treated as suspicious. So flying through the night, spying, healing, harming. It was never clear whether the owl was a messenger or a menace. So they were all approached with caution, as one would with any true mystery. And because all these stories kind of exist, one thread kind of remains constant, that owl lives in this liminal space between the living and the dead, the conscious, the unconscious, the ordinary, the non-ordinary. She shuffles between worlds. She carries messages to the other side and back again. And so any of the guides that go back and forth between the living and the dead are always seen as suspicious, right? So, when owl comes, she really comes through to, like, invite you into the darker aspects of the mystery of life. She's a protector, so she offers us courage to face what we fear. Which often is shadow, mortality, inevitable endings that make way for rebirth. She teaches us that nothing in nature is truly lost, that all things are transformed. And her medicine really says, lay the undead to rest. Compost what is finished its work, In journey work, she is all about the heightened senses. hearing and sight sharpens at dusk, dawn, and night. She opens clairvoyance, clairaudience. She helps us perceive what's long been hidden or denied. And through her eyes, we see beyond illusion. We call Elle as a companion when we're doing that really intense high priestess kind of work, the seeing in the dark. If you're afraid, Elle may amplify your fear before it dissolves it. So if you're learning to work and walk with your shadow, owls won't necessarily harm you, they'll steady you. She diffuses fear by revealing what's real. She doesn't bring death, but she helps us accept the life-death cycle with grace. So think of it that way. When the call of the owl comes, it's not that like she's going to cause the death, but she's saying, hey, pay attention. Everything changes. That's the thing. Elle is a midwife and a mourner. She helps us stay connected to those who have crossed over and reminds us that love transcends the grave. So many believe the souls of the departed fly in the form of owls. For the shaman, the owl is an ally in healing work, a messenger of the unseen realms, and an oracle for truth. So owl medicine says yes to walking between worlds. So we can go into the underworld with owl. So we move between light and shadow in service of wisdom. It requires courage and humility and a willingness to see what others cannot. She also belongs to dream time. And so there's a number of different myths that use owls. So Passamaquoddy tale of owl husband, Persephone's descent to the underworld, Psyche's forbidden glance at Eros, each tell the same truth, that the soul's maturation requires a descent into the dark. Fear is natural, but so is awakening. In the dark of the night, magic ripens. Feminine energy, intuition, lunar knowing flow more freely here. So to work with Elle is to work with mystery itself, to find that wisdom is not always born of light, but of willingness to see in the dark. So when you hear her call it dusk, remember she's not the harbinger of doom, but the herald of truth. She invites you to sit still, to listen, to see. So in her gaze, we find that the night itself is holy, and the wisdom that we seek has been waiting for us all along. So, October's teaching is cyclical, not linear. It says, remember what you're made of, remember what you've forgotten, let the living and dead share your heart at the same time. And when you do, you become the bridge, a living altar. You become the fire in the dark, the breath that keeps the lineage alive. So breathe deep, stay curious, and let October light your way into these darker months. And as always, I'll see you at the next start of the month, and next month will be on time. And blessed be. Thanks for listening to Centered with me, Angie Yingst. If you'd like to send me a question or comment about this show or any shows, you can send them to Angie@themoonandstone.com.